In the previous video, we went about designing and styling these text elements. Especially, we made use of margin and padding in order to give them some more space and create some breathing room within this page. Let's now go about and delete those elements as we won't need them anymore, and talk a bit more about structure. I am going to add an element called div block. A div element in itself contains nothing. It's also invisible unless we style it. Let me demonstrate you by what I mean with that. I'm going to take this div block and give it a background color of red. As you can see, it's visible here on the canvas. That is because Webflow manipulates the canvas so that we can see exactly what we are designing. However, if I preview the page, you see the div block remains invisible. That is because we haven't given it any height or width, and therefore the page doesn't know how to display it. However, if we inspect the source code, we can certainly see that the div is there. There we go. Let's take a look. There we go. We have a div block here with a background color of red. So it's present on the page, but it's not visibly displayed because the div block does not contain anything. Let's now give it a width of 100% and a height of 50 pixels. So 100% width means it's going to cover the whole screen width. Height, we gave it a 50 pixel height. We can use percentage or pixels in order to give element width and height. And we can combine the two, depending on how we see fit. So you can see now, given that we defined the width and height of that element, it's all of a sudden displayed on that page. Now you might wonder, why do we need these elements? Let me demonstrate you exactly why it is really helpful to use a div element on this picture above. Let me delete this div block and now try to center this image. We could, for example, now try to give it a margin of, say, 40%. And that sort of centers our image, not exactly. We could try to maybe increase the margin to 48%. Looks a bit overshot maybe. But you get what I mean. It is, you can definitely use margin, but it's not a real good centering approach, especially if we now add a second image and give that an image class as well. And all of a sudden we have issues centering two images here on in one row. We could alternatively, though, let's delete that and reset this class. Alternatively, take a div element and place the image within the div element. Now, I'm not sure if you remember, but when we talked about styling in the video on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we said that styles cascade down, meaning that if we style a parent element, the styles we apply to it also affect the child elements. So we can take this div block and give that some styling and tell it to center everything within itself, and that should also affect the children elements. I'm going to give it a display setting of Flexbox, and we're going to talk about these settings more in a future video. However, I just want you to see what I mean by styles cascading down. You can see we can now easily center that image, and we could, for example, add a second image now again. Give it also a class of image, and that class maybe some margin of 20 pixels. There we go. And now we have two images centered very neatly on the page, and it also adjusts mobile responsively. So if I change the screen width, it moves about. Let me demonstrate you another use case for div elements. We already we can nest one div element inside the other. So we have an outer div and an inner div. Let me select the outer one, give it a class of outer div and a background color of red. And then we set it a width 100% and a height of 300 pixels. And we have an inner div, give it a width of 50%, a height of 100 pixels, and a background color of maybe something yellow. There we go. And then I'm going to apply the same stylings I just applied to the image. Now we've centered one div within the other. Again, making use of cascading styles. And here in this case, we use the div element in order to create some styling on the page. So we can use div elements in order to style and in order to create styling in itself. And let me show you one more use case. We could take a div element in order to style completely other separate elements. Let me demonstrate you what I mean. We take two paragraphs, one we place within that div block and one outside. And I'm going to give them a class of text. And we are going to set that color to maybe something red to make it more visible, increase the okay. What now if we wanted to center the first paragraph but not the second one, and give it some more breathing room, the first one but not the second one? We could, instead of them sharing the same class, we could only give them separate classes and manually adjust the text styling for them both times. But what if you want to then decide to change later on the color to blue? You would again have to find all the text elements. Instead, what we could do is take a div element and apply some styling to that, and that allows us to keep using the same text class amongst those two paragraphs, but giving the first one styling and the second one a different styling. So div elements can be used in order to create colors or styling on the page itself, or in order to structure content on the page, and in order also to apply styling to other elements on the page. We are going to make use of quite a few div elements throughout building our website, and you're going to learn a lot more about them. So if you had some trouble understanding everything right now, again, don't sweat it. This is just a very brief introduction, and we're going to make use of div elements when we create our website a lot more. And I think you will quickly get very familiar with them.